Well, good evening, everybody. I'm very glad to introduce the second meeting of our digital conversation series about the office in the post-COVID-19 era. Um, as I did last week, because this is the second of these meetings, I will just frame a little bit what is everything about. Well, during the lockdown, most of us realized that this remote working or this home working is not just a word, but a real possibility, which doesn't mean that the coronavirus crisis and the lockdown introduced a new way of working. We think that it just accelerated it. And what we did in the last months in the majority of the cases where this form of work was just a way to respond to an emergency, and it was mostly like remote work more than smart working. So this kind of possibility of working in this condition gave us or introduced a lot of questions in our life. For one thing, it made so evident how this distinction between private life and working life is not so clearly divided as it has been in the last at least 100 years. This means that in this way of organizing the work, a lot of question also comes around the interest of the worker and the interest of the company, the well-being of the worker and the profit of the company on the other side, or other question concerning the identity, the private identity of the workers again, or the identity of the company for which they are working for, like the brand, in a more precise way to express it. The flexibility that is needed in order to introduce this way of organizing the work, but the flexibility is the flexibility from the company one side and again from the worker in the other side. And other questions like autonomy and control, or creativity and hierarchy in the work organization processes. All these questions came to us because they are concerning everybody of us, but also because in the last years we conducted a study who was asked to us by the public administration here in our Canton Ticino, our region. This study was conducted by Claudia Carpinelli. She's organizing also this series of meeting, and I also was part of the study, but the study was led by Claudia Carpinelli herself. That's why the first meeting last week was introduced by two persons representing the public administration, but it was very important to us to give a general idea of what this changing can mean in many domains. Like, okay, first thing was the public administration. The second meeting is the one of today, and is more from the side of the companies who are producing furniture, and not only producing, but designing and selling them, which means that they have a very important and strategic point of view on the phenomena itself. Next week, the approach will be more academic, because we have two representatives of the university from Lucerne and from Milan. And the last meeting will be more from the architect and the designer side. Big companies, one in Milan, DAGW, and the other one in San Francisco, ONA, which are planning the offices for big companies around the world. Okay, so it is in this context that I'm glad to introduce the two guests of today. Beforehand, I would like to introduce architect Dr. Thomas Dienes. He's an architect, studied architecture in Karlsruhe, and what is very important in the general frame of this meeting, he graduated with Professor Fritz Haller, who is one of the two founders of the USM company. Dr. Thomas Dienes is project manager of the Group Product Development Director of the USM company in Münsingen, and he will tell us how in USM this approach to the actual and the future situation concerning the design and planning of furniture and offices in general is run. In the other side, I mean, it is not in the other side, but after Thomas Dienes, we will have the intervention of Tim Reusch. He's also an architect, graduated in Dresden, specializing more in the industrial architecture, and is a product manager for Vitra, Vitra, the big furniture company too, where he has been working for the last 3 years. So I'm very pleased to give the screen and the scene to Thomas Dienes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's really a long title, and I hope my presentation will be not as long as this title. Maybe I just try to summarize some ideas regarding our thinking about this post-corona workplaces. And I would like now to share my screen with you. And can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. 1 second. This is exactly what sometimes happens. 1 second again.
Yes.
Now you see it. Okay. And now you see it full screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just summarized some ideas as well as some pictures. And the first picture I chose was a picture from 2018, Milano Fair. And what you see on this picture are 2 things. One is we see the modular furniture system, but not as a furniture as you normally knows it, 2 elements wide, 2 elements high, for storing paper, mainly in black, closed, something like this. You see it as an industrial building more. This was one point. Maybe I come to this point later, why we did it. The most important point for me at the moment is something else. You see people, you see a lot of people. And this is the reason why I choose this picture. For me personally, the time before Corona was very much linked to this physical contacts we had. We had multi-space offices. We had offices where we searched the right place for the specific work, of course. We tried to bring more the cozy atmosphere of the home to the office, sofas, nice colors, soft materials, textiles, all these things. And the office place was more a place for our social contacts. And this we loved and this we liked. Another thing we liked, because we liked this personal contacts, we also liked very much traveling. So far away, the better, maybe taking the plane to New York and so on, because also it's nice to have another culture, to see this. This is very important for us during this time. Meetings, public events, fairs, like this Milano Fair event 2018, the bigger, the more often, and the more people on the booth, the better it is. Overall, but it is a contrary to this, overall, in these times, we had something else. Overall, we had a slow digitalization process in most of the companies. Even a lot of research companies told us that how important it is to go on with digitalization. This is a time before Corona. And in order to characterize it in one sentence, the office was characterized by physical social contacts, meetings, workshops, fast-changing working groups, and all this under the pretext of efficiency and creativity, and we love being together physically. what is happening after Corona. And for this, I choose also one picture. And at the moment, I am in the office of Münsingen, and it's an open, normally a production hall, totally open. And within this production hall, we very shortly, in a short period of time, we had to integrate protecting walls. Very strange, because we like this open world. But we had to do it because of Corona. And this world we are now in at the moment is characterized of something else. People are scared being affected, of course. At the moment, the numbers rising again, increasing again. So at the moment, a little bit more. People are scared also using transportation systems, maybe not so much in the landscape. I am here at the moment, but maybe more in towns like London, Madrid at the moment, horrible, Rome, Berlin, in all these centers. Imagine, for example, a metro in New York, and you would like to be protected from other people when you are in a metro or underground system. And with this, you need, but this transportation system, you need in order to come from a private home to the office. People, of course, are scared. And very shortly, we had to work from home. And of course, we had not been prepared really well. And maybe some people have bigger flats, like 100 square meters, and then it's easy or okay to work at home. But imagine, for example, a person with 2 children, wife also working, man is working, and all the 5 people from one second to the other has to work at home remotely. 80 square meter maybe, or 70 square meter, a very normal situation. Not really easy to do it. And a lot of people really had then to work in the kitchen or somewhere else in this flat. Also, what we have at the moment, at the same time, the offices are getting more and more empty. We have a nice space at the moment, and behind me, nearly nobody, because the people are working from home. And the demand for safety solutions, of course, in order to keep distance in the office increased dramatically in a very fast period of time. So, extremely strong development in this direction, but at the same time, because the need was there that the people had to work at home, an extremely strong development towards digitalization. Some companies had been prepared, some companies had been not so well prepared, and they had to switch and digitalize and give the tools and prepare all these things for remote working from 1 minute to the other, more or less. And to summarize, this time during Corona, companies as well as employees discovered the many positive possibilities of remote working. And I must say, I as well, under the necessities of the circumstances of Corona. Now the big question, and for this I choose again one picture from this 2018 as a starting point. This woman who looks behind the curtain and wants to see what is coming up. The big question, of course, for us as well, what is coming up now after Corona? First of all, some questions overall. The question, of course, Pietro, you already started with this. Are we prepared enough for a continuous rapid change? This 50% in the second line, maybe it's 40% or 45% or 55%. At the end, it doesn't matter. A big amount of the people, we think, will also work remote after Corona. So the question linked to this, how much office space then will be needed in future? And what do we do with the rest of the office space? What will be the main purpose then in order for us that we love to come in the office again? Maybe we love meanwhile to work from home. How will these offices look like, and how will these offices be equipped? And how important overall with this, the question of sustainability, what for me personally went much too much into the background during Corona, because of course other topics had been more important. The question how important sustainability will to us in these uncertain times. The next question, this is exactly the office from where I am talking at the moment, the office what we refurnished or restructured just before Corona, very strange or very important maybe. Areas, exactly this non-territorial office situation where people can find the different situations everywhere, cozy atmospheres, sofa atmospheres, not with a sofa maybe, but with furniture system also being made. It's a nice atmosphere, and at the moment more or less empty. So the question, of course, what will an office look like in future after Corona? Some assumptions first. Corona I think, we can discuss this, very controversial, but I think Corona will not be the last unexpected crisis that affects us. Today, what we have at the moment will be part of a new normal. I don't think that remote work or homework will go back to near 0%. It will keep at a certain amount, a minimum 45, 50% roundabout like this. We are going into an office mainly for work that can be do better in an office than at home. Maybe this is a reason in order to go to an office. Maybe a second reason is, and also with that we have a desire for social contacts. At the moment we suffer, I think. Mainly younger people suffer, also the older ones suffer, as me maybe, with my gray hair, but people have desire for social contact. So these 2 points maybe is a very important point why people would like to go back into the office. Another point regarding this in a bigger scale, this new kind of working, a lot doing from home, only a part doing from the office, combined with a different shopping behavior. The question also is how our towns, the centers of the towns will look like in future when people will buy more and more online and not so much offline. I can't see it that after Corona, the people will shop only offline and not any longer online. I think no chance. They like it meanwhile online. They can deal with it meanwhile. So this number will keep the same as before in minimum. And the organizations will go on with their digitalization process. They had to start or they had to speed up during Corona. And regarding sustainability, only my personal assumption, the focus on sustainability will return quickly and even more strongly than before Corona. We have no other chance in this world. Our position. I think a lot of people at the moment ask me the question, what's the office really look like, if what color it will have, what solutions. And I hope to give you a picture, but maybe it is not this concrete picture you would like to have, but I try. It has a little bit to do with the positioning of our answer. The main aspect is we never know exactly what the future will look like. Also Corona, who had really expected a time like Corona half a year or 9 months before? I think no more or less nobody. So something very unexpected can come. And so we don't know exactly what the future will look like. And what we also learned out of Corona, the response times to react to circumstances like this is getting shorter, and how we can deal with this. This is a big question. And our answer at the end is the same answer as we had some years before. We are even more in this situation convinced to modular systems overall, not only furniture systems. Systems you can find also in a lot of other areas, because modular systems at the end has a high flexibility. They can create diverse solutions, also unexpected solutions. They can be adapted to future needs. You have no idea how these needs will be. And you can, if you're clever enough, integrate new technologies. Of course, you have to do it, because some of these needs you couldn't think before. And so you have always to go on to find these new technologies and integrate it in the existing systems. And if you are open enough with your system, these systems can apply very quickly to the unforeseen, much quicker than when something unforeseen is coming, and when you have from scratch to design it, to produce it, to industrialize it, and to spread it to the people. So long-term thinking as an answer in an uncertain world and rapidly changing world, this is our positioning at the end. Maybe two totally different positions. Long-term thinking, uncertain world. But with system thinking, you can link these two worlds together. This is our position. And to summarize this, and as a picture here, because production is an important part for us, quality is an important part for us. When you have systems, you can design it for extremely long period of time and can take care very much on the quality that it really, you can adapt it again and again and again over extremely long period of time. The summarization of this idea. For us, long-term thinking combined with a high degree of adaptability, because time is changing so fast and rapidly, This combination is a key of a sustainable future in a rapidly changing times. That's it from my side. I stop the presentation. Peter, I can't hear you. Maybe it's right or wrong.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to. Okay, good. Thank you very much, Thomas Dienes, for your presentation, and I'm so glad that you could share the vision of USM with our audience, and I'm very glad now to give the word to Tim Reusch from Vitra. We will see what another big company is preparing for our future in the offices. Thank you.
Is preparing how we're looking at it. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Thomas, for the great slides. I fully align, and I think in what you said about the sustainability approach, that anything that is flexible, that is modular, the quality, I fully align with this. I also prepared a presentation, so let me see. This works. Sharing. You should be able to see.
We can see it. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I don't just want to look at it from the perspective of post-COVID, or like after like the experience or where we're still currently in, but something that we've been talking about, something that we've experiencing for a long time, is that somehow the work we're in is somehow changing. And I strongly believe, and this is actually how I ended up in this field, that it needs different spatial answers for this context to actually give work a home, give people working a different home. And I think this is why it's fairly important enough to always understand why we are actually designing environments for work, why we're going to work, and then reflect how and what we actually do. So like the why, how, what. So going deeper into this discussion, I think something, and Thomas, you said it, something we realized during COVID and that we can't deny is that we live in a fully digital world. This is something that wasn't something we experienced through COVID, but it's something that for us was a very strong catalyzer to show what this actually means, because all of a sudden that people were like physically going to the office every day, were fully working on remote. And all of a sudden it was possible, not equally for everyone, but basically we had the chance. And I think this was also where we experienced what kind of impact this has to a certain degree, because we also, let's say, realized something else. I want to take this to like a higher level, and something we've been experiencing, I would say, on a long time already, because when we look at work and we look at it from yesterday's, let's say, industrial age, people were always sitting in the boat, like, you know, the lake was quiet, somebody was telling you what to do, and the quote would just float away and go straight ahead. And this was fair enough. This was a very successful road that a lot of people had come. Now, I think we've experienced this, like in the last years, a lot of companies have come to struggle. We've seen a lot of like small companies, startups growing exponentially all of a sudden, like coming up with new ideas, but also let's say and face it, also with a different approach. And this is something where all of a sudden during Corona, we've experienced like the lake isn't that quiet anymore. Somehow something has happened, and the digital age is more like a description of permanent whiteboard. So it's not just that you can't predict and say this is the way we go. No, it's let's say a constant exponential impact of things currently changing. So like organizations have to adapt, and it's all of a sudden that not everybody needs to have some knowledge in the boat in order to navigate and ensure that like have their own impact. So this is something we've been seeing also before, but to compare it like maybe even further is that if you want to compare, let's say, the corporate big world, so like big organizations, like a big ship, they can't navigate that easily. So they have like very successful track and where they're going. But to give you an example, like a big ship like this needs 15 times its own length to make a maneuver. So imagine the ship 350 meters long, 15 times makes 5 kilometers to make a maneuver. So what does this mean in an unpredictable world? Like you need to be small, you need to be navigable, like you have to be fast. And I think this is something where we experienced also in this time where all of a sudden we had to be fast, all of a sudden we had to adapt things, and everything that we were planning all of a sudden didn't exist anymore. Thomas, you were showing the great examples of the fairs, and Rethink, one of the big fairs this year, was supposed to be happening, and we're completely facing this as Vitra in a complete digital format now in the end of October. So we had to completely shift our mindset in order to be adaptable to this world that is happening and how we can actually keep with this. So what does this mean for our work? When we look at organizations and how they work, and if we look into the future and everything that I think we've also realized in these times is that it's stronger than ever before, that it is about connection. And connection just doesn't mean connections inside the organization and unpredictable, like, the informal setups where you meet up and everything like that. It's really about constant connection, having access to resources, but also having access to knowledge to grow. But it might also be the connection to outside, where it's about getting the input to the inside. So really the connectivity. On the other side, what we've also experienced that all of a sudden we were alone. And this is something that was always been talking when it comes to connection. It's also about like, what does this mean for bringing people together in the collaboration? So we strongly believe in the future, like the impact of organizations will not be driven by individuals. Of course, there's stronger and less strong, let's say, influences, but the collective has its purpose. So it's really about understanding what this means and bringing people together and to collaborate for a faster and greater future. And on the other side, this is also something that a lot of statistics have shown. The whole COVID time was great for developers. All of a sudden they were home, they could focus, they didn't have anybody bothering them. And all of a sudden, productivity actually raised. But you got to see that, productivity comes out when you focus and you actually go to the point where you deep work. On the other hand, you need something in the funnel that you need to create. So it's about bringing people together on a different level. So I think it is really about different work and really relating to this also different space experiences. So of course, we've all been in the world of home office. And of course, not everybody has the perfect setup. Also here, people sitting on the sofa, on the couch, some on the kitchen table, complaining on my team, for example, a little bit, we need different office chairs, so we made it happen. Of course, those were small things where we saw an impact, but also you're always working from a distance. And on the other hand, not everybody wants an office at home. So what does it mean in terms of quality and design also, how to integrate that maybe differently? On the other hand, this might mean, my home of work is wherever my Wi-Fi is. And I experienced this. I have team members now working from wherever over the world for times where basically, if you have a connection, somehow this brings everything that you need. If you have your laptop, you open it up and it kind of works. For a nomadic work style, this is something that is, I think, valid, but to a certain degree, because we strongly believe that it's really about bringing people together on a different level there again. And therefore, we think that the office, and we've been thinking about this a lot, what brings people back to the office, we can almost look at it as a recharge. So what is it really that drives you back to the company? What is it, what you experience there? How do you plug in with your company? This is something that is really hard to do from home, to connect to the identity, to connect to the culture, which is more than just the people. It's really the home of the work and how to drive this differently in the future. And therefore, I strongly believe it's finally I've been pushing this for a long, long time, but finally a little bit the end of an era where it's like putting people in front of a screen and getting them to a productive work style. So it's really about understanding what brings people back and what kind of drives them there. It needs to be an experience on different levels, of course, where it's about social interconnection. It's about being visible as part of a worker, part of the company. How does what I contribute become visible? How do I connect to the people in the big, in the small groups? And how is that possible, what you can't do in digital form and what you can't do at home? What does this mean in terms of qualities of spaces? If you think in nature, we're driven towards discovering new elements, something that I don't know, you don't do when you go to work, you sit at your desk and you go home after 8 or 9 hours. Not the same experience. So think about what drives people from a natural behavior and brings them there and stimulates them also. And I think what needs to be more and more at the core of the company is not just what they love, but really what is the core? What is the product that the people contribute to? How does your work become visible? And this is becoming more and more difficult in a digital age where people are not even physically together. It's already been difficult running through offices, but you saw the battery of desks before, where you walk past and you look on Excel screens and you don't know what anybody does. So it's really about how do you make your work visible and how do you make it touchable to the people? How do you bring that together? And I think it's important, and as I said, this is nothing we had to do before already, but it's really about starting this now. So it's really about rethinking what your spaces do. So it will be about utilization. It's about activating spaces right. It's about understanding that you need, in a hybrid world, this interconnection between digital and analog, bringing people together in different setups. It's about adjacencies, like really connecting people in the neighborhood. So like, what does it mean for the team being there? Not just like digitally, but really physically. Who do you need to connect with? How do we make this happen? And this maybe doesn't need to happen in your office, but it also could happen in a third place or anywhere else. So I was discovering, since we had this experience with my team, that people would start to meet up also in the city. So not just to have a coffee or anything, but really to relate also to work. We also will have to rethink what privacy means. We have to reconsider openness. Open space is something that has been, like, let's say, with a negative touch already in the past. But to consider also that there needs to be a relation between transparency and privacy is something that we need to connect, because you might need the privacy for the people also coming to the office, but nevertheless, you need the visibility as well. And I think what is also, and Thomas said it already, for us, flexibility means adaptability. There's not one answer, and there won't be. It's really about creating environments where you give people also the possibility to kind of take over, make spaces theirs. So really understand, how can I make this environment mine? Because this is what we do at home. This is like something where we feel well, where we feel our own belonging, where we feel safe. So how to create something to experiment and do things differently in the office, worse to come for. And it's also very important to really create environments where it's about like the natural senses, talk about the nature, talking about the simple addressing of our human needs in terms of quality of space, where we're driven towards excitement, where we're driven towards the lights and everything. So really from the quality of space, where you have to answer just the basic standards, I would say, but unfortunately quite forgotten in terms of functionality for quite a long time. And it's also about like, how do you communicate as a company in the future, in, let's say, the digital and the analog world, about who you are, what you want to promote, and like, how do you communicate your strategy? So it's not just putting your logo or your branding up on the wall, because it will be more towards, and what we're facing also, didn't want to talk also about this topic, but what we're having is like the demographical change, where we will have a much younger task force in the shift of the next 5 years that is overlaying this whole system, which is driven by something else, where, as nobody owns me said it a little bit, will be much more driven by actually what they do, why they actually do it, and not so much just by the old parameters and how we negotiated, let's say, the workforce before. So thank you from my side as an introduction, and
thank you very much for our side too. I'm so really impressed by the vision, the sharp vision that both of you at Vitra and at USM you are developing in order to focus your activity in a, let's say, also in a critical way. We have maybe as user or consumer, I mean, as you know, company who produce furniture, and so you are responding to kind of a market demand and so on. But we can see that behind this activity there is much more. There is really the construction of a vision, and which goes quite farther than the simple conception of good furniture. At the same time, I mean, it is also the case. But what it would be interesting to know now, maybe if just to open a little discussion now with our audience and with you, I remind the audience, if somebody wants to send some question, you could do it through your own private YouTube channel, YouTube identity access. So please feel free to send question to us. We'll see if it's possible to ask the same question to our guests. But I try to do the first question. Maybe I start direct. Mr. Reusch, who is already direct online. Okay, maybe you have the, of course, I'm sure you do it, you try to respond to the demand of a market by being ready with product and so on. What are the tools you are using in order to develop a vision? I mean, okay, you are designers, you have a vision that your designer activity allows you to go and to look through maybe the functional or the very simple stuff. I think that as a designer, you also develop a vision also oriented in the future. But are there other tools that you use at Vitra first and USA later, maybe, in order to...
Yes, on the one side, yes. And we have this very long-lasting relationships with some of the great and very well-known designers, Chiterio, De Burolek, just to name, or Gricic, which for us are, of course, some of like the inspirations to understand what the market needs will be in the future. So they are like, I would say, radar antennas a little bit that bring also their inspiration. On the other hand, also for us, it's becoming more and more challenging in understanding, predicting what will be happening in the future. So of course, we look very much deep and with our trend scout, for example, and we do foresight reports in order to predict what, let's say, social changes, political changes will be, and also to look out to a lot of successful examples that we can also already see out in the world today, to learn from them and see like how this will affect, in of course, a much more faster and radical change, the future, also other like clients, but also ourselves in terms of what this means and the demand for the products and the furniture we produce.
Yes, maybe Thomas Dienes, what is the vision at USM? I think that what it was made in the 60s when USM was founded was really a vision, a very interesting vision with this modular system, which really allowed us to think to new possibilities. What is the point now at USM? What are the tools that you are employing in order to anticipate the future, let's say?
First of all, I would like to thank you, Tim, for the presentation. It was really interesting. I know our company is, on one hand, we have a similar overall positioning in the market, and we go totally different directions. That's very interesting. And regarding your question, Pietro, 2 points are the same as the points Tim already mentioned. One, of course, is inspiration. So you have to talk a lot with people. We have not so this philosophy that we have a lot of designers we are working with. It's more a little bit, we have some designers for a long period of time, and then comes the other. Also, architect is a very important part in this row, a little bit similar as in the past, Fritz Haller together with Paul Scherer, Fritz Haller as architect. So this part is very important. Knowing what could happen in future also is a very important part. And this is really hard, of course, to do. Knowing means to listen, to work together also with research centers. Also this we are doing constantly in order to get a better knowledge what is happening at the moment and what could happen in the future. But a third point I would like to highlight. When you have inspiration on one hand and when you have knowing on the other hand, for me, it's very important also to relate these points to your own philosophy you had for OSM. It's an extremely long tradition or long philosophy to really reflect this to your own philosophy and think about what could it mean for your own organization. Tim mentioned the point before also in the company's culture, for example, could be an extremely important point why people would like to go back into the office. I agree totally. It's a fascinating idea. And it's a little bit similar as this reflection what USM at the moment is doing when listening to all these different audiences. And sometimes you have a similar direction you are listening to, sometimes a very controversial one. At the end, you have to reflect it to yourself and see what is important in your own opinion in order to go forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe it would be interesting to understand, now maybe we start with you, Thomas, Dienes, so that we make this kind of ping-pong system. Well, the design of office spaces, as we see quite clearly, is not just a question of beautiful design, although I think both the company USM and Vitra are really doing extremely beautiful design. I mean, in my opinion, but I think it's a quite shared opinion. But it's also a question of work organization and planning. Sometimes I imagine that companies comes to you with a quite clear concept of how the work must be organized. And so somehow the setting of the offices is maybe already planned by architect or designer coming from your client itself. Some other time I can imagine the client maybe is also looking for some support. How do you, in a more practical way, how do you deal with this situation? How do you plan? How do you collaborate with these companies? Do you make also, sorry, it's kind of a very market-centered question, but do you really support them with an office, with your planning office at USM?
I showed you the picture of Milano 2018. This was the first picture I showed to you. And the reason now I'm coming back to this, why we did this installation in Milano 2018 was a provocation. More or less, it was nothing else. Mm-hmm. Worldwide, we have partners, mainly sales partners. They normally have planning departments in the organization. Normally, they are doing the job. We have also partnerships to architects worldwide or other consultancies. They also are doing jobs for end clients in order to think about how an office should be organized or how an office should be planned. But of course, you're totally right. We have a furniture system, meanwhile, more than 50 years in the market. And normally it was something to store paper, but you can do so much more out of it. So first of all, what we are doing in our sense, in our planning department, we provocate, we try to stimulate, and we try to break boundaries. What else could the people do? Also, going beyond the boundaries. This is the idea. Learning, training, discussing with other people that they can consult the end client and discuss with the end client what an office in future could be, and then giving them the tools. We had the long discussions, I think it was 10, 15 years before, when we thought about, I also came from a consultancy company from Fraunhofer to USM. And this was exactly this time, if we should offer this service internally at USM. We thought maybe it's better, much better, do it with partners, and having a planning department and a department consulting this in order to help these partners to think ahead and to break the boundaries. This is our concept today.
Okay, thank you. Tim Reusch from Vitra, how do you deal with this kind of situation?
Yes, of course, we have a lot of like very strong connections and relationships with designers and architects around the world that we strongly collaborate with. On the other hand, yes, we have our own, let's say, teams. The one that I'm leading here at the headquarters, the Interior Design Studio, which is a lot of times more supporting in the expertise of the details, let's say, that the furniture complexity brings with itself. And also, as Thomas said, like also inspiring what kind of other possibilities there are with Vitra. But we also understood to go further in collaboration with partners outside in really giving the helping hand with the expertise of workplace consulting, workplace psychologists, interior designers to really guide or help, let's say, our clients on their journey. What we're also experiencing that in this complex and fast pacing world, it is really about bringing experts together. So like it's also for us, it's nothing that there's one right solution. So it's also about the challenge. And the interesting challenge, I would say, that we also experience with other interior designers and architects in this field. But we're let's say on this journey and starting this journey, especially internationally.
Yeah. Okay. Like yes, I'm asking myself is sometimes the companies come with a very clear vision of what the work should be, how it should be done, and maybe sometimes it's not just a question of design, and so maybe it's also another point to develop somehow when you deal with clients. But maybe it's not the case for big companies. So, look, there is something which is also interesting, I guess. Until, let's say, up until 6 months ago, there was some furniture which was really booming, kind of I don't know, this telephone office boxes that you need to put in open spaces so people can make phone calls, disturb the other workers, or maybe this quick meeting boxes people meet very quickly, short think time on, or the telephone couches. I think that we can see them. So those one with the big elements covering kind of space so that when you're speaking, nobody else is hearing what you. So during this coronavirus crisis, this kind of stuff is not working too well anymore because you have to share them and you have to. But it's not right now. It's more. What do you think is going to be the furniture in the future? I mean, independently from the coronavirus crisis, but you spoke about the city as an office nearly, and people working for the need to come back to the office to share this very important experience. What do you think is going to be the furniture element who is going to develop, like to boom next year?
to boom next year, yes. Well, first, like of course, we got to consider that we need the people in the offices to kind of bring them back, what we discussed earlier. On the other hand, I see what you mean. Like, of course, this kind of let's say individualism, like giving people space for privacy, is something that was a little bit abandoned and a little bit forgotten. It's something that is now one of our essential needs, and of course we experience the same in the office environments. So this is I totally saw this demand, and I always had like, you have this demand, there's something that went wrong in the office design, I guess. So something you need to reconsider because somehow it doesn't work. what I strongly believe is that when we look into the future and what will be driving, let's say, the furniture is really also what Thomas was explaining with the USM concept. It's really about having the opportunity to adapt things, being able to look at things, let's say, more sustainably, actually, because you are flexible in the space. And on the other hand, it will be very much driven by collaboration. So anything that enables people to work together differently in the experience than is possible basically in the digital way, or let's say what combines both elements on the digital and the analog that brings them together, will be, I think, one of the essential elements that we will experience. Because nobody will go basically, and this is also sad, like when we look at it, to sit on a desk, what you can do at home. And it won't be like having your phone conversation individually, which you can also have from home. Then there will be a demand for this as well, because you need some sort of privacy to actually give that space to the people. But I think the demand will definitely shrink. It will be really driving through the community, establishing this magnet, the quality, what brings people back to the office.
Yes, it gives us, I mean, personally, a lot of hope. I can really hardly imagine that people could spend their own life inside their home and office at the same time. It's like maybe it's nice for 3 months. You can find some advantage, but 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years, maybe, I mean, we're all getting crazy, and I think it's not where we want to go. Isn't it, Thomas Dienes? What is the vision, the furniture in the future? How to look like? What is going to boom in the next 2, 3 years?
I was happy, I must say, that you asked him this first question first, so I had a little bit of time to think about. If you would like to look around now in this new office, I also would like to find a telephone box and a cozy thing with walls around. And if you would like to ask me the question, what I did before Corona, when I would like to have a phone call, of course I have, as all these parts. Tim, you mentioned it before, my work is where my computer is, and this is also a computer, so I never went into a phone box. I, of course, went somewhere where I wanted to phone, maybe with a nice view to the outside or a nice view to somewhere else, and that's it. So a little bit, we have really to see it in overall sense. To think about collaboration, totally right, I agree totally. Also, a mix of collaboration and privacy is really important, and how you design this is another question, and maybe it's then not so important if it is a telephone box or something else. At the end, it's more the question, what is the overall sense? And never forgetting, again, digitalization is an extremely important point, not only in remote work, also when I'm in the office. When I have a meeting and collaborate, normally in future, it will be not only either online or offline, it will be a combined system, of course. So we have to think more and more also about digitalization in the office, back in the office, how this will work with all these video conferences, that the people are not scared about it, how we bring this kind of working, what I was used to do with the whiteboard and the pens, for example, back to a video conference system and other things like this. This will be a big task, I think, on one hand regarding offering the tools and other companies offering these tools, and part of our task is to integrate it then in an office space with the right furniture and the right equipment, I would say, in overall sense.
Okay, so I tell again, I'm glad that the direction is going back to the office. I mean, and which is an important part of our work tomorrow. I hope you're right. Okay, of course, everybody understood it quite well. Smart working is also home working, of course, and you're planning how to maybe change or adapt the furniture in the office for the new way of working in the future. Are you also planning how to integrate the office work furniture inside the domestic environment.
Who first?
Tim, you want to answer first?
I can go first, yes, of course. I think for me, and I was just discussing this today, I think it's difficult when you talk about work on generally separating what is happening at home and what is happening in the office, because it's still work. And I think this is what you always have to understand, what this means for your work. What this means in terms of products and what we're planning. I think this is something what is very important, that we're looking at things here at Vitra. We're always looking at products from a very transversal, let's say, perspective. So like for us, each product needs to not just answer a function or like ergonomic that is met in the office, but it needs products that are suitable, let's say, depending on, or let's say independent from where you are. So like a lot of our products, like I'm sitting in the office, but probably everybody would think I'm in the living room at home. So I think this is very important in our DNA to look at the product and answer like the different needs and the different environments also there as well in the future.
Yeah, well, we mentioned this overlapping of the private and domestic domain environment with the private with the working environment. It was something which was already happening before the Industrial Revolution. Maybe we're going back somehow. We have furniture at home which are kind of office kind, and in the office like couches with USB plug and stuff like that. So Thomas, Dienes, what is the vision at USM?
At the end, I think regarding the product, it never was so a big question, because of course it started 50 years ago with an office furniture, and exactly the same parts people used more or less by chance, maybe in special areas, in public areas, and at home in totally different situations. And this is a very interesting thing for me, that it is not planned by a planner. It is more or less driven by the end consumer, because the end consumer likes something and builds something out of it you have never imagined before. And out of this story comes, of course, that this product you will find in totally different situations as well, of course, at home, as a dining equipment, or maybe also as a home office. For me, it's at the end, in this sense, more an organizational question and also a question of space. Organizational questions, for example, you could ask me the questions before Corona, why I hated to work at home. I did it, but I hated it because at one stage when I work hard, I would like to separate, and I would like to, at one stage, not to see any longer the work. I would like to relax a little bit. This work-life balance, for example, as a slogan, I would like to throw in the round. So this is one point. So what can we really do to separate relaxing and, on the other hand, working? What not always is relaxing or funny. Sometimes it's absolutely not funny. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it is funny. To separate this in an office a little, in home a little bit more. And the second thing is, maybe we here in this round, I would assume, have flats that are big enough in order to manage all these things also at home. But what happens if you look at other people also in areas, again, these big towns where rents are so high, where flat space is so small, how to integrate then an office space in this flat where I can work, but it's really auch good to work on one hand. On the other hand, maybe when guests are coming and I would like to celebrate a dinner or something like this, or having a discussion, to have not just a few always on my work. And this, of course, has a relation on the design of the furniture or the solutions we would like to offer. And in these situations, of course, we have to think much more in these very dense situations, I would say.
Wow. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that this perspective of the non-home office, maybe more than the home working, is maybe the good way to finish this little discussion. I'm also glad that it finished also with some personal view of not only as a planner and designer, but even concerning our experience, which is also a very important part in our way of thinking. And well, so I thank you very much, really, Thomas Dienes from USM for his contribute, as well as Tim Reusch from Vitra. I'm so glad that we could have this discussion today. And yes, I would like to remind our audience that next week the meeting is going to be around, I mean, the title is going to be Smart Working and Home Working. What will be the future of workspaces? So we're going to start from the point we live today. I thank you very much for your contribution, not only our guest Thomas Dienes and Tim Reusch again. I also would like to thank Claudia Carpinelli, who is organizing all this discussion, as well as Giovanni Profeta and Silvia Converso, that behind the scenes they are tuning the connection and everything and helping us in this series of discussion. So see you next Monday, 5 October, 5 p.m. through the same channel. Thank you so much. Our guest will be Sibylla Amstutz from the University in Lucerne and Michela Bassanelli from the Politecnico in Milano, and they will speak about what is going to be the office tomorrow at home, in the offices. Their vision will be more concerned by an academical view, let's say, university and research they were leading recently. So see you next Monday. Thank you very much, all of you.
Bye-bye.